Hello, lovelies. Welcome back to my channel. If you notice, I have a different background. I'm trying to move around my office and see what space I like, what background I like. So for the next quite a few videos, probably, I'm gonna be playing around with stuff and just see what we can figure out. But today, I'm very excited. So this video is going to be about sacred text. Now, sacred text, if you are like me, hearing the term sacred text, I would immediately think about Christianity and the Bible. I never really considered that. If you hear the clickety click, hi Odie. I had never really considered that paganism or witchcraft or what have you would have sacred text. I have, so many books on paganism and witchcraft. It never occurred to me that any of them would be sacred. But I was watching a video of Kellyanne Maddox, and she mentioned the term sacred text, and she mentioned, or she talked about how any book can be sacred if it's sacred to you. And she talked about how she has, I think, if I remember correctly, I think it was a book of poetry. And to her, that was a sacred text because she went back to it again and again, and she would flip through and she would find inspiration. So that got me thinking. That got me thinking about books that I find myself going back to time and time again. The books that I read and I felt inspired by. The books that, when I read parts of it, I was like, Or the books that, when I read parts of it, I would then actively introduce that inspiration or whatever I had gotten from that text. I would actively introduce it into my tarot readings or into my my practice itself. I would introduce, to those things. So I put together a little list of books that I consider to be sacred to me. Now, and when with sacred text, it's not always, it's not always going to be the same. I feel like there will be times when one is more than the other. There'll be times when I completely put one aside. I'll add in new. It's just, a perspective thing, right? So my 3 top books for sacred text, I did have like 6 on there, but as I was writing about this video and putting my thoughts on paper and looking at each book and going through each book, 3 really stuck out more than the rest. That was my cat. More than the rest. So I'm going to go with 3. And I'm going to count them down from 3, 2, 1. So my third sacred text that I find myself going back to and I find myself feeling very inspired by is The Holy Wild, A Heathen Bible for the Untamed Woman by Danielle Dulski. I love this author. I have multiple of her books. I'm currently in the midst of reading one of her other books. But this book was the first one of hers that I read, and I couldn't put it down. So the back says, "Ode to our wild feminine souls. This provocative book invites you to create your own spiritual path based on often suppressed ancient principles and contemporary practices, using the elements earth, water, fire, air, and ether rather than traditional patriarchal hierarchies. This holy book is designed to connect each individual to their universal but often denied powers." Wild woman Danielle Dulski takes you deep as she explores and embraces sacred feminine archetypes such as the mother goddess, the crone, and the maiden. Join her as she guides you to envision and explore a world that enriches and supports your spirit, body, and mind, as well as your global community and the earth. I was so just like enriched by this book. I was inspired by this book. I am, as if you've been here, as you know, I am a very nature, green, eclectic witch. I do, the majority of my practice is herbs and essential oils and nature and going outside, and this very much called to my soul. So I have bookmarked in here little things that had called to me as I was looking through it when I was considering, the books to be, what books were going to be my sacred text. So I'm just going to read you a few of those. And maybe you will feel as inspired as I was. Maybe you will want to go purchase this. I would highly suggest it. This is a book that I will continue to reach for. But the first one, let me see, what did so Find Her in the Dark, the Fertile Shadows of the Feminine Path. It says, Heathen priestess, your bejeweled crown is the same size as mine. I am neither above nor below you, and the round table of the holy wild has no structured hierarchy. I have no authority mandated by any great spiritual institution, and my truest church has long been the forest-covered mountains of my childhood, where no one has ever called me master or queen. Resistant am I, however, to the dilution of the diversity of the feminine spiritual experience. A lack of hierarchy does not demand sameness, and it is the living, breathing variety in her stories, in our ever-broadening relationship with her, that must be nourished and protected. My story is no more significant than yours, and my hope is that you drink in the poetry, feel nourished by the ceremonies, and complete the myths I begin here, while constantly affirming your own authority and your own spiritual agency. And the way that this book is set up is it is set up by each element. So it's like book of water, book of fire, book of air, so on. And then you have the verses of that element, and then you have the magics, which is she gives you rituals and things that you can do for each element. But the intro for some of these elements are, for the book of earth, is the earth element is our ground, the place from which we rise. Here, our greatest lessons are those sourced straight from our soul's hard-won liberation. Earth calls us to dig deep, to uncover the blood-soaked treasure embedded in our wounds, to harvest our most ancient underworld wisdom, and to remember the way back to our wild home. Here, we stand firm in our sovereignty and our selfhood, howling incantations our hearts have always remembered. Here, all that is uniquely ours serves to nourish our roots and remind us of the immutable truths tattooed on our bones. Come home to the wilds, heathen. Let's speak of stone circles and forbidden fruit. Share your ancient medicine with me, and I will show you the overgrown, untamed places where you belong. The priestess of the wild earth emerges within the wild woman, not when she chooses to eat the forbidden fruit, but before, when she weeps for a home she has yet to find. She might experience an in-the-gut betrayal that nearly breaks her. She might feel that she has sinned against herself for staying in the small place so long, but her primary concern at this point is her liberation. The pain from the wound is strong, but her thirst for freedom is stronger. Like, isn't that amazing? No one can write your story for you, my love, and is not the task of any one of us to judge the gardens in which we do not live. We cannot discount the number of human beings who remain trapped despite their desire to escape, nor can we dismiss the sheer bravery of those staying in their gardens in order to protect loved ones or their own precious bodies from harm. And then last but not least, the intro to the Book of Fire. The fire element is a great transformer and a glowing beacon of hope and promised evolution. The seat of the fire element in the body is between belly and heart, our inner altar and the physical center of our selfhood and sovereignty. Fire purges what no longer belongs, clearing away what no longer serves the individual or the collective. Here, the witch is not tied to the stake and engulfed in flames. She is a willful pyromancer, and she uses her will to direct the power of the inferno. No, a witch's rage is holy hellfire, a blazing wrecking ball swung often and hard at long-standing structures of feminine oppression, be they psychic fences built by her own hands or political mechanisms of environmental or social injustice. The maiden of the unbridled sensual archetype validates our emotions, all of them, each of them, so that we can truly embody our right to feel deeply, even when that feeling is anger. The fire element tasks us with remembering that rage can be righteous and soul-affirming, particularly when it is unleashed raw, then transmuted to a productive, ever-burning change agent. While women are taught to suppress their anger, lest they be labeled as hysterical, bitter, bossy, or irrational, the prophetess of the wildfire archetype shows us the nature of our femme force, the power of our collective rising, and the magic born when we tend the flames of our communal discerning will. This book was amazing. The way she writes called me in. It pulled me in and it kept me there. I will keep coming back to this. So that was number 3. And that was The Holy Wild by Danielle Dulski. Next, as you all know, I am such a big fan and a lover and collector and devotee, you could say, of tarot. I love it so much. It's an everyday part of my life. Even if I'm just touching and shuffling cards, it happens every single day, usually multiple times a day. So my second sacred text book is 78 Degrees of Wisdom, A Tarot Journey to Self-Awareness by Rachel Pollack. Why I keep coming back to this is because she speaks in terms of the cards that sometimes I did not even contemplate. She speaks of them in terms that help me to understand them better. They help me to further my tarot knowledge, and they really help me to, when I do my readings, I bring something new to the table. Not that my, my readings or my reading style has gotten stale, but you can never, I am the firm believer that you should never stop learning. You should never stop seeking knowledge. Any topic or anything that you have interest in, you should constantly be seeking knowledge, constantly be wanting to expand your horizons on what you know, what you work with, what you do. And this book helped me do that with tarot. And there were a few in here that I wanted to just point out. So she does talk or do each card. And the couple that I'm going to talk about are the Star. It is a well-known fact that the Star and I do not have the best relationship, but this book helped me to kind of see the Star in a different way. So she talks of the Star as peace, kind of like the emptiness after a storm, after an upheaval. Like there's nothing really, right? But she ends, when she's talking of the Star, she says that if the Star indicates the human as a link between the spirit and the outer world, then the card reverse symbolizes the channels closed. And when the waters of life are dammed up inside, the outside can only become tired and depressed. I've always seen the Star as just this constant, flow of water, constantly moving, unchanging, not, the Star to me always didn't really have a meaning unto itself. It always took on the attributes of these surrounding cards. But reading that, it makes me look at the star differently. It makes me look at it and say, you know, maybe the waters aren't flowing as freely as they should be. Maybe the waters are jammed up somewhere. Maybe, you know, like what's happening that the waters themselves are having trouble pushing through and getting through, right? It helped me see that. Then the moon. The moon is my card. I love the moon. I love it so much. The moon is the card of the imagination as it molds the energy of the star into shapes that the consciousness can comprehend. The moon reflects the hidden light of the sun. The imagination distorts because it is reflecting inner experience to the outer mind. In the Middle Ages, people believed that the souls of the insane had flown off to the moon. That comment really caught me, and I highlighted it. So I highlight a lot in my books, just, you know, things that catch my eye, things that I want to, you know, to be able to just flip it open and quickly find. A werewolf howling under a full moon is a vivid metaphor of the power of the unconscious to bring out something primitive and non-human in the most respectable people. Remember that the moon's number adds up to 9, the hermit. The teacher guide of that card is not visible, for we must face the moon alone, but the guidance given beforehand can help us find our way. And I love how she talks how everything is interconnected, how you can see things and find things, and it's just, so I also wanted to cover just a few things with, not the devil, it was, which one was it? I think it was death. So death card has always, of course, been a card of transformation, of rebirth, change. To me, the death card never actually means like a physical death. It can just mean a change of circumstances, or, you know, like a change of something, right? She's, let's see. When we die, our flesh decays, leaving only the skeleton. That too will eventually pass, but it lasts long enough to at least hint at eternity. Therefore, the skeleton in the Golden Dawn card implies that eternity triumphs over the transitory. Let's see. And she links up people, or she links up the different cards together, like by force of will, strength, the person, with the help of the therapist guide, the hermit, allows knowledge to emerge of who he or she really is and what habits or fears he or she wishes to shed, wheel and justice. This knowledge brings calm and desire to change, the hanged man. But then a fear sets in. If I give up my behavior, the person thinks, maybe there will be nothing left. I will die. We live under the ego's control for so many years, we come to believe that nothing else exists. The mask is all we know. Often people will stay stuck in therapy for years because they fear release. The nothingness of the fool terrifies them. The fact is, they are right. The I, created out of these lifelong behaviors, will indeed die. That person will cease to exist, but something else will emerge. So when I read that, it makes me think of that when death is pulled, maybe it is pointing to the fear, not necessarily the act of change, not necessarily the change taking place, but the fear of said change and what could be holding them back from a change that could potentially be necessary, or a change that could be beneficial in the long run. So that fear, the death card could symbolize just fear in itself. And I had never really looked at it that way. And I loved that this book, or I love that this book makes me question how I look at the cards, question and evolve and expand on what the meanings of the cards are for me. So, 78 Degrees of Wisdom by Rachel Pollock. And number one, this book I have read, I couldn't tell you how many times. I keep going back to it. I keep getting snippets from it and feeling really good about it. This book has inspired me to do something that I haven't necessarily done yet, but it is in the works. This is Priestess of the Morgan. Prayers, Rituals, and Devotional Work to the Great Queen by Stephanie Woodfield. As you know, I do work with the Morgan. She is the HBC. But this book, let me read the back to you. Journey with the Great Queen to deepen your devotion. Build a more personalized devotional practice and strengthen your relationship with the Morgan using this profound book on enhancing your spiritual path. Through stories, prayers, and rituals for both groups and solitaries, Priestess of the Morgan shows you how to better understand and serve the Great Queen, regardless of your gender. Explore the true nature of the Morgan, discover what it means to channel her voice, and learn about her role in prophecies and curse work. Create your own unique tradition with this book's ritual building advice and guidelines for developing a yearly cycle of celebrations. Stephanie Woodfield, a devotee to the Great Queen for over 20 years, uses her personal triumphs and challenges as beacons for their journey. This extraordinary book provides everything you need to deepen your spirituality and find victory and fulfillment along your path. So the way this book is set up, so the contents, so part one is the nature of the Morgan, who she is, who she isn't, the Morgan in war, sex in the Morgan, invoking peace, victory and healing, things of those. Part two is vision and prophecy. And then part three is devotions and oaths. Now, this author does, before the start of almost each chapter, she tells of a personal something or other that happened with her. Either she talks of a ritual, she talks of channeling the goddess, she talks just things of that nature. And I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed hearing about her experiences, knowing she's been a devotee of the Morgan for over 20 years. But some things I picked out to read to you just because they stuck out to me. Washing the blood away and the price of victory. We imagine victory as a hero with their sword raised high. All the enemies are beaten and the day is clearly won. Victory isn't so simple. For me, victory has never been accomplished in such a cheerful or simple way. Victory has always come first with a visit from the washer at the ford. Perhaps because victory and death go hand in hand. To overcome an obstacle or an enemy, usually something must die, whether that be your foe or a part of yourself or your perspectives. Something needs to crumble and give way for forward motion to be accomplished. Even if in your battles you start out on the side of the angels, the fight itself will change you no matter what. No one comes back from war the same, not the winner or the loser or anyone in between. That sort of change is something the washer at the ford rules over. None of the imagery of the washer at the ford is given to us by accident. The washerwoman purifies the treasures she's gained. She washes armor, chariots, and spoils of war in her stories. When it is not gore, the items, though bloody, are valuables and treasures in many cases. The blood is the cost of the purification. She washes away the pain and sorrow so we can enjoy these things without the stain of how it was gained. When she washes us, we gain possession of ourselves. When she washes us clean, we can look back at what we have endured and be grateful for what we have been through, all our trials to become what we are now. The blood that she washes, which stains her river red, is the sadness and regret the pain that covers the treasures. It is a kind of baptism, a recognition of the cost of transformation. You didn't have to die in those battles, but you bled for the knowledge gained. If you didn't release that sorrow attached to that transformation and the hard lessons that came of it, you wouldn't be able to enjoy the treasure you gained from it. When I first was called to work with the Morgan, I always thought of it as a like baptism by fire. She was very, and not to say I didn't need it at the time, because I did. I was in a place where I needed a kick in the ass. I needed a surge of anger and adrenaline and just disbelief that I had let myself fully sink into this life that was draining me, that was slowly killing the person that I was. I was disappearing into this relationship that wasn't feeding me, that wasn't giving me anything in return. And I needed her swift kick in the ass. I needed her to be like, bitch, is this really what you want? Is this what you want to do and be for the rest of your life? Like, you have dreams, you have aspirations, you have all of these things, and you're letting this one person and this one relationship hold you back from that. Like, what the fuck? What is going on? So I really needed that. And the treasures I got afterwards, they were covered in blood, so to speak. They did have to be washed. They did have to be cleaned again, but I came through and I was stronger for it. And the treasures and things that I gained from it, I will always look at fondly. One other thing I just wanted to read in here. So also, when I first got called to work with the Morgan, I talked about how one of the instances where I was like, something is coming for me, and this is how I know. It was the time that I was seeing vultures everywhere. Now, I do live, so as I've said, many, many times, I do live in Kentucky. I live in a kind of a rural part of Kentucky. So vultures and carrion birds and things like that aren't like an unseen thing that happens around here, right? Like, we see them all the time. But this was in my face every single day, to the point where I was driving my car down the road and I saw a vulture just sitting on the side of the road. It wasn't by a dead animal. It wasn't like picking at anything. It was just sitting there staring at me. And as I got closer and I was just about to pass it, it swooped up and swooped at my car and almost like hit my windshield. And that was a moment that I was like, okay, I'm going to start to listen now. I'm going to start to like look into things. And when I started my research into the Morgan, no one, or vultures weren't really tied to her. Vultures weren't really a thing that she was like connected to. No one else had really had experiences with, vultures. And that was my main sign from her. And so for a long time I was like, well, is it the Morgan? Because the vultures aren't really tied to her, but I knew it was. And when I read this book, the first time I got to this part, it validated that part for me. It validated what I had seen, what I had felt, what I still feel. Vultures are still a part of my practice with her. I pay attention to vultures. When I see them, I always think of her. But there's a part in this book, and And I will just read, the little bit of it. It said, several years ago, a woman contacted me with a question. Only the animal she was encountering the Morgan through was a vulture. At the time, part of my weekly routine was to hike a trail through a local park close to where I worked. It was a kind of walking meditation. I let go of the stress of the day and listened to my playlist as I walked along among the trees and huffed up the hills before I went home for the day. On one particular day, the woman's question was on my mind. I didn't doubt her experience, yet there was no connection in the lore between vultures and the Morgan. I felt that I was going to disappoint her when I replied to her message. I continued on the trail, thinking about the experience she had detailed in her email. It's not hard to zone out a bit when doing a walking meditation. In a way, it is the point. As I hiked down a steep trail, being careful not to trip over some tree roots poking up along the path, I suddenly realized I was not alone. Something brushed over the top of my head. Understandably surprised, I shrieked at the top of my lungs and ducked down. There were no trees overhead. I had just come into an open area, and there were definitely no branches that could have brushed the top of my head. Branches didn't feel like that, like something alive. I looked up and saw a turkey vulture circling above me. It swooped down one more time before circling higher. Then I heard a crow call out as if laughing at me. In truth, I'm pretty sure the Morgan was laughing at me. I'm a shapeshifter, I felt her say. I will appear as I like. In that moment, I understood it didn't really matter how the Morgan appeared, only that she showed up in the first place in our lives. She would speak as she wished, through whatever means she wished. Yes, she had no connections to the lore to vultures, but that wasn't the point. Whatever she was trying to tell this woman, vultures had some kind of relevance to that message. In the end, it had nothing to do with the lore and everything to do with the language of symbols the Morgan was using to speak to the woman. Not everyone hears the voices of gods in words. Sometimes it is through symbols and omens. The language of symbols is vast. We aren't just going to encounter animals and symbols to the Morgan. After all, what would that really tell us except that she was there? I already knew she was there, and I think the woman I was chatting with via email already knew the queen was talking with her too. There were messages in the images she was showing this woman, a kind of visual language. That just kind of, even though I had long accepted, that the Morgan had first shown herself to me, or like a sign was through vultures, that really validated me. But this book I come back to constantly. I would just randomly flip and read. Like, I just flipped, and there's a part titled, Don't Force It. No matter how close your connection to the Morgan, there will be times when she doesn't have anything to say to someone, or the timing for doing oracle work is not right. You have to trust her. You should respect that she doesn't appear on demand. None of the gods do. Even if you have people who are expecting to have this kind of experience in which they can speak to the gods through you, if the gods say no, then they say no. End of story. There are also times when I'm in trance and everything is going as it should. Then I'm sucked back into my body and someone is talking to me, the Morgan hanging out in the background telling me I've got nothing to say to this one. You do this enough and eventually this will happen. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with the person. Just for whatever reason, it's not the time for that person to be given a message, or maybe they need to talk to another god. It's just, you can always just like flip and see and find things, and I love this book. So my number one sacred text at the moment, it could change, it could not, it probably won't, but Priestess of the Morgan, Prayers, Rituals, and Devotional Work to the Great Queen by Stephanie Woodfield. Another way that book has inspired me is I have been thinking for about a year and a half now about taking vows, taking an oath for the Morgan. I didn't want to go into it lightly. I didn't want to just do it to say that I did it. I wanted it to mean something, and the longer I think about it, the more sure I am. So I just need to work out the details of the ritual itself. I need to work out the oaths that I'm going to take, the vows I'm going to take. I feel really compelled to, as part of my devotional, as part of my oath or my vow, I do want to get a tattoo dedicated to the Morgan. So, and that is like a very big part of it for me. The act of getting the tattoo, the pain of getting the tattoo, the healing process of it, you know, it all. I want to devote that whole process to her. So I just need to get with my tattoo artist, and I need to work with him on a tattoo that I want to get. And the reason why the tattoo I feel like is a good way, number one, tattoos are very, not mystical, but I love tattoos. I have like 6 now. I love tattoos. I love getting them. I love the process of speaking with my tattoo artist and us and him drawing it up and us talking about it and making changes and then deciding, and you know, the whole process of it. I love it. But I also trust my tattoo artist. I've known him since I was in high school. I trust my tattoo artist to take this very seriously. I trust him to give this all of the reverence that it is needed, and I know he will do that. So I am moving towards doing that ritual to take vows for the Morgan, so that I will officially be a priestess and devotee of the Morgan. Not that I'm not now, but this will be in a more, you know, big official capacity. But so those were my 3 sacred texts. Will more be added? I don't know. Will some be taken away? I don't know. We will see. As always with any, you know, spiritual practice, it is cyclical, you know, things come and things go, and it evolves and it shifts and it changes, and that's okay. So as long as I find inspiration and as long as I feel called to read these books, I will. And if that changes, then that changes. But let me know what you think about these books. If you have any sacred texts that you feel called to read and to look at and to share with people, please let me know. I would love to see what other sacred texts that people are choosing. But thank you so much for stopping by. I wish you the best week, the best day, the best month, the best year, what have you. 2025 has been a shit show so far. I don't know if I've made this abundantly clear, but I do not support the president. Trump should not be in office. Elon Musk, craziness. So my spiritual path, my tarot, my herbalism, my everything helps keep me sane. It keeps me afloat in these crazy, crazy times. So if it does the same for you, please let me know what books inspire you in this time of crisis. Thank you so much for stopping by. I will see you next time, and I will see you next time. I'm so sorry. I will see you next time, and I can't wait to continue talking to you guys. Bye. Have a wonderful day.